Now, the police are being urged by the government to take a tougher line with COVID rule breakers. Ministers are reluctantly considering stricter restrictions, as we've been hearing on the programme. Curfews, bans on people exercising with others, with or without cups of coffee outside their own household, harsher rules for shoppers. Meanwhile, they're worried, these ministers, maybe even frightened by the rate of infection and the risk of hospitals becoming overwhelmed. As ever, police are in the front line when it comes to enforcing the rules. So let's say hi to John Apter, who's National Chair of the Police Federation for England and Wales. John, hi.
Good afternoon to you, John.
John, thanks for joining us. First of all, sympathy to your colleagues who have an impossible job. This whole system depends on consent, doesn't it? And most people support tougher restrictions. But your officers have the job of dealing with that minority who don't.
Absolutely, and you said it, John. It's impossible. It's really, really difficult. And I think that the issue that we have is everybody wants tougher enforcement until it applies to them. And that's the reality of it. So police officers, my colleagues who represent 130,000 police officers across England and Wales, they will do what's expected of them. But what we need in return is clarity, crystal clear guidance, information, not only for the public, but also for my colleagues as what's expected of them, because there's so many, as we've seen, so many nuances to the legislation. And I understand the difficult position that the government's in, but if they want us to do the best we can with the limited resources that we have, then they have to meet us halfway. And I'm not saying that we should have tougher restrictions. The ones that we have, we are trying to police. We're trying to find that fine line between educating and working with the public, but where we need to use enforcement. But it's not easy, John. It's really difficult. And my colleagues, as you say, are on the front line and the firing line of some of the frustration and anger from the public.
Yeah, although it's not really, in many cases possible, John, to achieve crystal clarity, is it? Where does a bit of socialising, a walk in the park end and exercise begin? And sometimes police are going to have to make that judgment. And police are human. They make human mistakes. And sometimes, John, they're going to be heavy-handed and overzealous, aren't they?
Absolutely. And I completely understand that when mistakes are made and it's there for all to see on social media, then there's frustration and there's anger. But colleagues are doing the best they can. But it's also, John, on the backdrop of, we've seen an increasing number over the month, as the months have gone by, of anti-vaccine protests, anti-face masks protests, anti-everything protests. And what we found with some of these individuals, they're agitators. So they will react with the police. And as soon as the police start dealing with them legitimately, the cameras will come out and then it's all over social media without any context. And my colleagues are saying to me daily, John, we're doing our best, but we're damned if we do and we're damned if we don't. We're just trying to do our best. And sometimes it is all about trying to find that judgment. What is reasonable in the circumstances? And we're not always going to get it right. I accept that. But it's really difficult. But the vast majority of the public are with us. I genuinely believe that. It's just about finding how we can find that path through what is going to be a couple of terrible, difficult, challenging months for us all.
John, you want clearer rules. Do you also want tougher rules?
Well, look, that's for the government to decide. I'm not here saying that we need tougher rules. If we want fewer people to die, I would say, not as a police officer, but as a human being, as a dad, as somebody with a family with frail people within it, then of course we want to do all we can to protect as many people as we can. But what my colleagues will do is whatever we're presented with as far as legislation is concerned, we will do our best. My plea to government is where we can, we need to make that legislation as crystal clear as it can be. I think that we've got better over the months, but it's still a challenge. We've talked an awful lot in the media, haven't we, about what is local? How far can you go to have exercise? Well, what's reasonable to you might not be reasonable to me. And that's what we have to try and find that balance on. It's really difficult.
Now, look, give me a police perspective on this. I put this question earlier on to a Labour Party shadow minister, and I acknowledge then and I acknowledge now, it's not an easy question. It is a dilemma. But I'm interested in your take on it all the same. Do you wish to see neighbours informing on one another more?
I would have and I've been out on patrol when we have received calls from neighbours who are concerned about what's going on in another property. I have absolutely no issue with getting calls from the public who've got genuine, legitimate concerns over a serious public health risk. What we've also seen, John, and we can't ignore this, is we have seen a number of malicious and false calls for whatever reason. And we, again, are knocking on people's doors saying we've had a complaint that there's a party going on here. And what you have is maybe an elderly couple who, the last party they went to was many, many months ago. So we have to find that balance. I've got no issue if the public are genuinely concerned that there's a serious public health risk, people are breaking the law, then I think, no issue at all with them contacting the police.
Okay, John Apter, thank you, Chair of the Police Federation for England and Wales. It's 4:51, about 10 minutes' time. We're going to go to Downing Street and hear what Matt Hancock has to say.